Stepping foot as the first South Korean president in DPRK territory for the first time in 11 years. Earlier today, we also got the first televised live feed from the DPRK being broadcast here in Seoul as well. But just in a few moments, we're going to see President Moon deplane from his plane that landed just about under 30 minutes ago at Pyongyang's Sunan Airport. We still don't know whether he will be greeted by Chairman Kim Jong Un at the airport, but we have seen other officials, including his sister and close aide Kim Yo-jong, being seen at the airport as well. As for the rest of the day, what we're going to see is the president will have lunch, followed by his very first meeting with Kim Jong Un later in the afternoon. The chief of staff here in South Korea indicating that any formalities after this welcome ceremony will be omitted because they want to focus more on getting to these meetings. And if you hear behind me, we're going to see what we're seeing now is Chairman Kim appear here at the airport to greet South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Mike?
Fascinating stuff. Shane, what can we expect over the next couple of days in terms of these meetings?
Well, we know a rough agenda, the outline. We know that inter-Korean ties, developing inter-Korean ties is a main topic, reducing military tensions along the demilitarized zone. But of course, denuclearization will be key. And for the first time, what we've heard from the presidential office here is that denuclearization is an agenda item in an inter-Korean summit. So President Moon has a lot riding on his shoulders during these meetings. If the first two meetings were more for formality and in terms of improving relations, now we're at a point where Washington and Pyongyang are at odds over denuclearization and the timing of that. So when a press conference is held on Wednesday following their meetings, whether we will hear any concrete actions as far as timeline or possibly opening up the DPRK's nuclear facilities to outside inspectors, agreement or declaration these two leaders will be able to reach.
Shane Hom live for us in Seoul as we wait the meeting, the historic meeting that's going to take place shortly. A lot of fanfare there at the airport. I'm joined now by Myung-Koo Kong. He's from Boston. He's a professor of political science at Baruch College. What are the goals for both of these leaders as they sit down for talks again?
They basically wanted to resuscitate of this summit meeting, and of course improving inter-Korean economic cooperation, as the reporter highlighted, making the demilitarized zone and the northern limit line peaceful cooperation or disarmament of conventional weapons. All such kind of things would be very important between the two Koreas. But the most important main goal, of course, is to make some kind of breakthrough or breaking the stalled denuclearization negotiation between the United States and North Korea.
And they've just opened up the door now, and Moon Jae-in making his way off the plane. A lot of pageantry here, and that's what we've witnessed in all of these summits. Very dramatic, lots of people in colorful costumes, music playing. Describe that for me. How important is all of that? The pomp and circumstance.
As in the current circumstance, as we know that, let's go back to about a year ago. About a year ago, we talked about some potential war or military conflict between North Korea and the United States, and some kind of repeated missile, test by the North Korea. So we were actually really worried about some potential second Korean war. But now we are talking about, ending the Korean War, and we also talking about, it's a long-term process, but building a peace regime in the region, even diplomatic normalization between the United States and North Korea. At least, between the two Koreas, they made a gigantic, step forward in terms of inter-Korean reconciliation. I think in that sense it's very important. But one thing we have to notice from this summit meeting is that the outcome should be, the denuclearization agreement or measures suggested by the North Korean regime should be very concrete this time. If that's not the case, the current situation can escalate into really bad situation.
We just saw the two leaders embrace again, more greetings, flowers being delivered to Moon Jae-in and his wife. You know, one of the things with his delegation as he hugs some of these young participants there, his delegation, he's bringing, it's about 200 people with him, many of them business leaders representing the country's
17 of them.
Yeah, largest companies. How important is that economic piece?
Oh, it's very important to the North Korea, of course. But as we know well, any kind of inter-Korean economic cooperation, even reopening the Kaesong industrial complex, it's under the United Security Council's sanctions against North Korea. So this economic cooperation or South Korean help should go with the denuclearization measures and then lifting the UN Security Council's sanctions. So the coordination between the United States and UN Security Council, and then maximum pressure, and then at the same time, very concrete denuclearization measures by the North Korea should go with this, inter-Korean economic cooperation.
They're making their way through the receiving line now, shaking hands. You already alluded to this, but I want to get your thoughts on the U.S. and the DPRK, because it seems as though those talks are stalled. It seems like Moon Jae-in has just been kind of a driving force, even when it looked like things were going to tank between the United States and the DPRK. He revived it. How long can he keep this going in terms of trying to play this mediator between these two countries?
Oh, that's a great question. As you know, always conflict mediation is a really tricky job. South Korean President Moon Jae-in, he can be criticized from the U.S. side, can be criticized from the North Korea side, all at the same time. Conservative group in the domestic politics in South Korea can criticize some rational or romantic wishful thinking based approach about North Korean denuclearization. So his position, conflict mediation is very precarious and difficult job. But under this kind of, for instance, here in the United States, one of really risky and uncertain factors is that within the Trump administration, even the White House staff, they don't seem to have any coherent policy in dealing with North Korean crisis. For instance, whether the United States ultimately need to accept any kind of concrete measures suggested by North Korea. For instance, Kim Jong Un seems to send a letter to President Trump that he wished to denuclearize on within the first term of President Trump. And then he seems to have suggested some initial measures for denuclearization. But whether the staff or policymakers here in the United States, they can have consensus whether North Korean approach or measures are satisfactory or not. So no coherent position or here in the United States. I think that seems the most important and critical factor, but at the same time very uncertain factor right now.
Professor, we're going to listen to a little bit of the pomp that's going on here. If you'll just hold on for just a minute, we're going to watch as the two leaders make their way down the red carpet. A band, military procession there. See the photographers in front going along with them. Let's listen in. Well, that is a remarkable start to this Inter-Korean Peninsula Summit. You see the two leaders standing there as they watch as the military parades in front of them. You also see how carefully choreographed this is in the DPRK. Kim Jong Un kind of motioning Moon Jae-in to move to a different direction. They obviously were going to stand in certain spots on this podium. There they are, standing erect, watching the parade of soldiers walk by. Again, this is just the beginning of this summit. Professor, one final question for you before we leave you. I want to get your thoughts. Undoubtedly, the U.S. president is watching this. This is the sort of thing he likes, a big show. What do you think the odds are that he and Kim Jong Un will have another summit?
I guess I cannot predict, all right? But ultimately, it depends on President Trump, right? So nobody, probably even President Trump himself, does not know his, genuine, plan or intention in the coming month. But I would say cautiously optimistic, because the more President Trump is cornered in domestic politics because of the coming midterm election and impeachment, risk, he may need some kind of breakthrough to, highlight his achievement during his, tenure here. And then I would say that, cautiously optimistic for the second, summit meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong Un.
Professor, thanks so much for your analysis. Appreciate it. Heartbreak after the